next panel, and this is on payments in emerging markets. Please help me welcome our moderator for this session, Shailesh from Cisco. Shailesh, I'll turn it to you.
It's great. Thank you, Nirav, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for joining this panel discussion. The topic, in case you're not in the right hall, it's mobile payments in the developing markets or in the emerging markets. Okay, if that's not what you came here for, I suggest to look at your agenda. But you have obviously heard about now the mobile payments fireside chat with Mark. What I'd like to do is just give you a quick intro. I think we have assembled here, with the help of Nirav, probably the most experienced, erudite, and accomplished panel on this topic, on the topic of mobile payments in emerging markets that can be built. So just so you know, we have representatives from every part of the value chain, starting to my extreme right and your extreme left. Deepak is actually coming from India. He represents the world of banking and financial services, and he's at Kotak Mahindra, which is one of the top 5 banks in India. So welcome, Deepak. Next to him is Rohit. Rohit is from the credit card and financial services payments industry. So he's from American Express, which of course you know is the #1 credit card company by dollar volume. Now, what's interesting about Rohit is he's also responsible for the venture capital piece of American Express, so American Express Ventures. So he looks up and talks to a number of different entrepreneurs. So welcome, Rohit. Next to him is Amol. Amol comes from the payment innovator company, PayPal. So that needs no introduction. There have been many speakers from PayPal today. I was looking at it, so this is like, PayPal has a pretty significant presence here. And Amol will represent that part of the payment innovation world. Okay? And next to me here is Sridhar, who represents the technology platform value chain. And also, Sridhar, we are anointing you as the representative for telcos in this panel, right? So he sells to financial services companies as well as to carriers. So we are going to, have you look at and focus at carriers. So that's the panel. It doesn't get any better than this. So I would really encourage you to, if you have any question, to tweet them, or to, if we have time at the end, ask. We are going to make this a very crisp panel, in part because we have only 30 minutes. Okay? So before we get started, how many here in the audience have heard of M-Pesa? Okay, just about, I would say 30%. How many here have used your mobile phone to make any kind of payment? Okay, so similar number, essentially, right? About 30 to 40%. Well, let me tell you right now, if you have not used your mobile phone to make some kind of payment or financial transaction, I guarantee you that you will in the next 3 to 4 years. This is a very, very high growth market. In fact, in 2013, mobile payments is expected to be around $250 billion market worldwide. A big portion of that is actually happening in emerging markets through services such as M-Pesa, which was launched in Kenya by Safaricom, and today they have 20 million subscribers already on that particular service that has now been replicated around the globe. In Philippines, there's an M-Paisa service in India now, which ICICI has launched in collaboration with primarily with Vodafone, right? So this is a high growth market, but at the same time, there's a lot of very interesting dynamics in this market, particularly as it pertains to emerging markets. So what I'd like to do today is we have organized a set of 4 questions. Okay? These are questions that I expect the panel to answer for you in a thoughtful and hopefully in some kind of controversial fashion. Okay? So my first controversial question is, on the topic of, Deepak, you'll like this, disintermediation of banking. Okay? So people talk about, and you know that in the world there are a lot of underbanked or unbanked people. In fact, there are more mobile phones now than there are bank accounts by a factor of 2. People in the bottom of the pyramid of the economic class, need to be able to participate in financial industry, financial transactions. For that, a mobile phone is probably better than a bank account or a bank branch. So what I'd like to do is actually, this is a very important topic, so I want each of the panelists to give us your view on a bank-based wallet vis-a-vis a cloud-based wallet like PayPal, vis-a-vis a telco or a carrier-based wallet, that is starting to emerge because carriers also have relationships with end users. So what I'd like to do is start with Deepak, and then we'll go around. And please tell us what you think of this disintermediation.
Before I get into giving my answer, what I think about it, I think there are 3 key stakeholders as we have rightly defined. There is telco, there is bank or the financial service, and there's a technology company which is in the business of providing the money service or mobile remittance. Now, each one has a different role overall if you look at it in the context, because while from the financial and the risk perspective, be it in terms of anti-money laundering or in terms of the KYC of customer or in terms of facilitating not just the individual small transaction, but even the large volume transaction or the business transaction, banks and financial service players will continue to hold a sizable role in this whole play. Of course, the distribution and reach and the speed of execution of bank has always been a challenge, and that's where the telco companies come in, because they obviously have a much wider distribution network. And in a lot of emerging markets, they sell prepaid product much more than the postpaid. So obviously they understand managing this entire small value transactions in terms of reloading of prepaid. And you need technology company to develop this whole thing. So I would say it's a question of not about either or, it's a question of building this ecosystem where all 3 of them will have to come together, work out on the cost dynamics, rather than saying who owns it, because in reality it's the customer-driven business and not a transaction-driven business.
That's a good point. Okay.
I share the same sentiment in the fact that I too don't see this so much as a disintermediation of any of the existing players, because really from the underlying procedures around transaction authentication, fund transfer, reconciliation, we're pretty much relying on the same existing systems. And the friction is definitely happening, as you said, because of the overlap in consumer relationships. But from a customer point of view, what they really want is a frictionless way to load money, have a variety of different sources, and use it effectively in a ubiquitous manner. So really, I agree that right now it's more of a fact of getting a right framework in place to figure out value distribution, but the emphasis is too much on just the value in the old age model, as opposed to looking at it in the broader context of what is the true value being created. So I don't see this as the traditional players will still be around for a long time, but there's an opportunity for new players to come in and add value.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you look at us as a consumer, right, how many wallets do you really have? You have one wallet, you want to be able to use your bank, you want to be able to use your credit cards. So from that standpoint, kind of PayPal's vision has always been, ever since it started, to be that wallet in the cloud. Mm-hmm. In fact, interestingly, PayPal started, the original business plan was to be money between Palm Pilots. Those of you who still remember Palm Pilots. And then kind of it took a little bit of detour on the online commerce space, and now we are kind of the predominant commerce player on mobile payments, on track to do around $20 billion in mobile payments alone this year. So in terms of the construct, I feel consumers should have the choice to link whatever financial instrument that they want, whether it's a banking account or a bank account or a private label or a credit card. And from a merchant standpoint, merchants should not have to integrate to multiple carrier wallets or multiple bank wallets. They just want one place where it gets integrated. And from that standpoint, I think a wallet in the cloud that works across the banking infrastructure, across different carriers, across different handsets, I think from a consumer adoption and merchant adoption standpoint, that stands probably a better chance.
Okay. Yes. How about you, Caesar?
I'm going to take a slightly controversial approach to this. I agree with Deepak that banks know KYC. They have existing mechanisms to deal with AML and other regulations that are very important when you deal with money. But especially when you deal with emerging markets and you're talking about bottom of the pyramid, telcos have a much farther reach. There are many, many villages in a number of emerging markets that do not have a bank branch. They do not have an ATM machine, yet people in that village have a mobile phone, and telcos have figured out how to enable these people to do cash in and use the cash for voice and data services. So they have a very large distribution chain that a bank typically does not have. And again, in emerging markets, even cloud-based wallets like a PayPal does not have. So there's nothing to link to. If you are a small farmer in a village, you have a mobile phone, but your wallet can be there, but how do you do a cash-in? So I think telcos can play a significant role in this. But obviously, for the reasons that Deepak mentioned, many countries have become a bank-led model right now. And a number of banks that recognize the value in mobile money are beginning to get mobile money licenses, and they are setting up agent networks, and they are delivering financial services to people in bottom of the pyramid in very different ways than how they did it in the last few decades. So again, from my perspective, mid-90s was all about getting a banking license, setting up an ATM network, branch network, and offering financial services to people. Late 90s was about getting a Spectrum license, setting up cell tower networks, and providing voice and data services. And the future is all about getting a mobile money license and offering new wave of products and services that cater to people in the bottom of the pyramid. And I see banks doing it in many locations. I see telcos doing it, and I see cloud wallets getting there. But the key is the agent network.
Okay, great. So what I'm hearing from you guys is it's not about disintermediation. The pie is there. It's growing bigger. There's room for everybody, right? And carriers who have historically not played, because of the connectivity, now they can play in this new world, in the world of financial. So makes a lot of sense, okay? And what you also said is focus on the consumer. Make it easy for the consumer, which was both of your points. Okay, so I got that. Now, next question. So is this really about mobile payments, or is this really about something else? Is it something bigger than that? Is this driving social change? Is this about commerce? What is this about? So I'd like the two of you to actually answer this and tell the audience what your perspectives are.
Okay. Yeah, Shailesh, I absolutely think it is much more than payments. In my mind, it is about providing financial identity to people in the bottom of the pyramid. If you look at what mobile phone has done, it has provided communication identity to people in the bottom of the pyramid. Think about your maid 20 years ago. If she didn't show up to work, tracing her down was not an easy task. But now everybody has a mobile phone. Whether they have a balance in the account or not, you can reach them, and they can reach you through a missed call, right? So it's done wonders to people in this segment of the population. And I believe, mobile wallets and mobile payments enables people to get a financial identity. And companies like us are very passionate about using the power of 5 billion mobile phones out there to support and reach the 2.5 billion people that have a mobile phone but do not have a bank account, and the rest that are unserved or underserved by traditional financial models and payment mechanisms. Give you a quick example. We did a study in India a year ago with CGAP, and we found in parts of Mumbai, Tekedars, the agents that bring villagers to work in the city, charge the villagers an enormous fee of 10% per month in terms of cash burial cost. So these people live in a slum, and they've brought in all their life savings into the city, and to save this money, they have to give this to an agent and pay him a 10% per month cash burial cost. This is unacceptable. People that get unemployment wages, Narega payments, maybe $10 a month, $20 a month, 40% of that money goes to people in the value chain. Whereas if you get the money inside a mobile wallet, you're bettering their life in a very big way. Another example is the villagers that come to work in the city. The only mechanism for them to send money back to their families in the villages is through a money order. So this, the inconvenience of having to go to a post office, the cost of buying a money order, they can't buy a money order for 100 rupees, so they have to accumulate the money. And then the postman in the village essentially enjoys the float for 3 weeks. So even the money has reached the post office in the small village, he keeps the money for 3 weeks, enjoys the float, and the postman that delivers the money to the lady who's uneducated, that has a mobile phone, is taking a 7% bakshees, right? So it's a broken system, and I think mobile payments and mobile wallets have a tremendous impact to people in this part of the ecosystem.
So what you're saying is it's driving efficiency, economic efficiency. It's potentially uplifting, a broad range of people and bringing them into the financial services world.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Financial inclusion.
Financial inclusion. Okay, that's a good term actually. How about you?
Yeah, well, I agree. It's not about payments. It's about commerce. And if you look at the analogy for PayPal here, we're part of eBay. It's about connecting buyers and sellers. So that's the use case. And then kind of payments is just a frictionless way to complete that transaction. We're not domestically present in India, but kind of we've launched PayPal in Latin America, in Brazil, for example, where we enable kind of feature phones, low-end phones through SMS USSD, where you can onboard a PayPal account, and we're seeing tremendous uptake on transactions. It's really about small merchants, buyers and sellers, transacting, sending money to, using mobile number as an identifier and just making payments. So as long as you can identify the key use cases and the payments part is just part of that broader commerce transaction, then I think there's incredible value to be created.
Got it. So you're taking the social angle, and you're taking the commerce angle, right? And the social and the efficiency. Okay. Just to make sure that if do you guys have any thoughts on this? Otherwise, I can ask the next question.
I agree with everything what was said. Commerce and sort of financial inclusion, access to credit is a big part of this overall discussion. And
Okay. So this is all happy, right? Where is the problem, right? So I'd like, Rohit and Deepak, if you can talk a little bit about the challenges here, right? This is a complex ecosystem. Anybody who has done business in India or China or any part of Africa or in any emerging market realizes that it's actually pretty difficult, to get things going. Regulators are breathing down your neck, in some cases helping you, in some cases not helping you. Security is a challenge. Fraud is a problem. So can you talk about what are the challenges here to drive a mobile payments ecosystem?
Sure. You want to say?
So, yeah, on the regulatory front, definitely agree. It's still a challenging environment, and Deepak addressed some of them: KYC requirements, AML requirements. So some of them are well-intentioned, obviously, to prevent fraud, but transaction limits, requirement of a bank account, those are definitely a huge inhibitor for more broader adoption. And definitely is an opportunity to leverage new identification schemes, new risk assessment schemes, and new underwriting methodologies. The traditional models that have worked in the developed world are definitely not easily transferable. So looking at non-traditional signals for underwriting purposes is required. Security is definitely a concern, but I also look at as the user experience also needs to conform to the local environments, the local markets. In markets where literacy is might not be high, requirements around emails, etc., we are creating additional friction, even from the user experience perspective. And the more fragmentation, the more confusion and sort of delays adoption for everyone.
Any example you can give of where things have been difficult, or for example, Nokia tried to launch some mobile wallet, didn't succeed, and others have tried. Any example that comes to mind now?
I would rather comment on.
Okay. All right.
I can.
Yeah. So let's have Deepak, and then I'll ask you for an example.
I think there are a lot of challenges, I would say. I was just jotting down, and I could probably think of 10 to start with, and I'm sure if I sit down, I can add another 10 more. I think the first and the biggest challenge comes here is the challenge of trust. Do you trust a mobile phone or a gadget that you use for making a call with your money? Because anything to do with money, I think it's the first is a question of trust, be it a bank, a lot of people globally today don't trust their bank. Here comes a question of you are saying that, am I going to trust this device with my money? So I think that's the first basic question, and that talks about obviously a whole lot of issues about what banks need to do, what telcos need to do, what regulators need to do in terms of, obviously a lot of effort has been put in that direction, be it in terms of encryption or two-factor authentication, or fraud check, risk policies. Banks have to make provisioning for losses, doing transaction monitoring, setting up limit, but believe me, still that's not enough. Because majority of the people, even today, those who use mobile for everything else, they don't use it for payments.
Right.
I think the second and most important part, and which we discussed in the first part of our discussion, is everyone who owns customer, be it a telco, or be it a technology company, or be it handset manufacturers, or bank, they all think that they can lead this entire innovation. I think people will have to learn to work together and find a viable model, keeping customer at the center rather than looking at just because I have a reach or a distribution or I am a bank or I can innovate faster, I'm going to drive this change. I don't think that's going to happen. Third is, of course, the distribution, and some of you have touched upon, especially about how do you reach out to a large underbanked segment. Because I think that's obviously one of the key structural issue when you're trying to reach. And of course, there are options like business correspondent in some markets that's been identified where banks can work with telcos as the business correspondent and go out to those markets where setting up a bank branch is not financially viable. Revenue sharing will continue to be one more such area, I would say. Ability to work with international telecom companies and international bank on a similar platform. Because today what we are talking is more of the local solution. But if you are looking at developing market, and a lot of these developing markets, a large part of their GDP comes through the inward remittance. If you look at market like Philippines or India or any of these countries, a substantial part is through inward remittance. How easy or convenient can you make it for the money to flow into these countries? Using the device would require not just your own regulation, but regulation in a much larger world which connects the developing and developed economy. And mind you, in a lot of these markets, cash is still a very prevalent way of using money. You are asking people to move from cash or check or card to a mobile payment device, and this transition, of course, in a lot of these markets, you don't have enough card customers. Check is not used if the customer doesn't even have access to bank account. And those who are using cash, how are they going to transfer and move to a platform just because they carry a phone?
Right.
So I think this entire thing has taken off much faster, of course, in few developing markets, but a lot more needs to be done to set up this structure.
Deepak, can I ask a follow-on? Regulations or regulator, is that friend or foe?
Well, regulators have their own concerns. So like, for example, I can talk about India. In not too many countries, before I talk about India, not too many countries, including even Kenya or Tanzania or South Africa or Philippines that we give example of where this is taken off, there's no strict written regulation around mobile payment business. It's still very much part of the electronic payment, and this just forms a very small subset of the electronic payment platform.
Right.
So regulators are still saying, unless you have a bank account, you can't use this platform, at least in India. So I really wonder how we are going to solve this problem.
Okay, fair enough. So Sridhar, you had an example.
I think Deepak covered it.
Okay, good. By the way, you said give me a 2-minute warning. Your clock says 6 minutes. So hopefully we'll have 6 minutes. All right. So next, what I wanted to do was, obviously many of you in the audience are either current entrepreneurs or serial entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs. So we have a pretty interesting panel. They see entrepreneurs all the time, or are entrepreneurs themselves in the mobile payments world, in emerging markets. Can each of you give one idea that folks in the room can run with? That would be very interesting to solve for in the next 3 to 5 years. I'll start with you, Sridhar.
Okay. Shailesh, for all the great entrepreneurs here, I can think of many ideas in the mobile money space because it's an exploding market based on what I see. And the pain points.
One.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you one example.
Yeah.
We've done an application in Indonesia on our mobile money platform in partnership with the Ministry of Transportation, where a bus line called Trans-Serbagita moved an electronic ticketing system. So the tickets essentially got into a NFC card tied to a mobile wallet. So obvious benefits are cash replacement, for the conductor, and bulk purchasing benefits, loyalty, all the basic benefits, right? In addition to that, in that deployment, we've done a m-commerce application to enable the bus conductor to do additional commerce with the passengers during the journey. So for instance, they're able to take a lunch order, and the lunch order for either noodles or Chinese or Indonesian food is transmitted to a restaurant 2 hours away, and the food is ready by the time the bus gets there. Right? So there's a generic transportation application that you can build where with a single Android-based phone that the conductor gets with NFC, they're able to convert the bus ride into an experience similar to what you see in a Singapore airline or a Emirates airline, where things are being sold in the bus and things can be picked up and photos are taken and memorabilia is available on the other end. So it's payments combined with commerce, as Amol pointed out. So I think there's an opportunity to build a generic transportation application that you can replicate across these emerging markets.
That's a great idea, Sridhar. So those of you in the Bay Area for VTA or BART or Muni, this is what you can go do. All right, Amol?
I don't have any specific ideas, but I think if you look at just the payment experience in emerging markets, because of the kind of device fragmentation, because of the kind of capability of feature phones, kind of it's slowly migrating more towards kind of smartphones, but because of the challenges of the device and the kind of carrier infrastructure around data plans, etc., it's extremely cumbersome to sign up for any sort of a wallet and then conduct a mobile payment transaction. So if you're looking at kind of innovation, I think from a consumer experience standpoint, just making a very frictionless user experience, I think, is something that's broadly needed.
Okay.
I definitely see a lot of opportunities on the acquisition side, both on the merchant as well as on the consumer. And especially in emerging markets, the lack of really reliable data is a challenge. And for someone to use non-traditional signals, like we talk about prepaid versus postpaid, so using behavior on the mobile device as a way of underwriting risk assessment, there's a potential for some improvements around underwriting in that regard. Yeah.
That's a great point. So this is something that we didn't cover in this panel, but in a future panel, we should look at analytics and the intersection of mobile analytics and commerce, right? There's an interesting thing. Deepak, your idea.
Very much. I think I was looking at 2 points, but I think one of it you have partially covered, so I'll say 1.5. I think the first is there's a lot of opportunity on the customer experience tools, because when you look at a customer, he is connecting with a bank or a financial institution today through multiple areas. He may be doing a transaction on an ATM, and next time he probably is using IVR or probably a bank branch or internet banking and now the mobile device. So how are you going to provide tools which seamlessly connects all the platforms that he may choose at different point in time? And for me, that's one more option, is mobile is an option today. It's not necessarily the only option. And that needs a lot of data and analytic, be it for the bank or for telcos or for the merchants. Mm-hmm. And that's how you add value in this entire ecosystem. And of course, my favorite, how you can add more value on mobile security and develop tools around it to make both consumer as well as the partners feel that this is a safe mechanism to build this business.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think we are coming to the close. Let me just say a few words. I think that what this panel has told, at least and hopefully you have got the same thing, is the customer has to be at the center, right? And make sure that the right kind of simplicity, the right kind of security and trust, has to be built, so that you're giving the best customer experience. I think that's kind of the focus. And second is, the opportunity is there. You heard a few good ideas already, so would love for you to go build a company around this. And the third is that it's not easy. There's a bunch of friction points. There's a complex ecosystem that needs to be built, but it has been done before, and there's a big growth market. So all the best. Thank you.